Hello and good morning. It is, what is it? It's Wednesday morning. Sorry, I've been away. I've been hunting and took a week off to sit in nature and see beauty and just kind of take a break from reality, which is always needed. It's always nice. Perspective gives clarity, and in order to get clarity, we need to get perspective, and we can only do that by stepping out of our day to day. Anyhow, I want to say a huge thank you. The book launch went great for everybody who pre-ordered the book. It is obviously still up for pre-order at guidetothegrind.com. That's TO, because for some reason I can't get the two to work. I own both sites, and every time I call them, they say that it's done, and it's just not done. Anyhow, still working on the book. It's going great. It's actually amazing what's coming up for me as I write the book, the realizations I'm having, the memories that I'm going through and processing. It's actually quite a cathartic experience. I think that's a good word for it. But I had a really huge realization yesterday when I was writing, and that is about communication and how we take exterior stimuli and translate them to our interior or internal experience. Now, that sounds weird, but if you think about it, I'm missing my tripod, by the way. It's still at hunting camp. I have to get it back tonight. This is killing me. My arms just aren't quite long enough. But if you think about how we convey ideas, storytellers have been a thing since the beginning of time. We sat around in our tribes and in our families around the campfire and exchanged stories of the latest hunt or a great adventure that we went on, or passing down history or things like that. But every time that we were communicating those stories, what we had to do was basically create a word picture in someone else's mind. And as we receive those things, if you think about the way that most of us receive information is not in words, but in images. And that's an interesting thing because, there's people texting me at the same time I'm trying to do this. It's very distracting. I don't know if I could put this on airplane mode and do this at the same time. I think I've had troubles with this. Anyhow, that's my problem, not yours. Sorry, I'm feeling a little punchy still. I needed a couple of days to get calibrated. It's tough to come back and start doing this again and be so extroverted when you're just sitting in the woods by yourself for so long. Anyhow, it was a really interesting observation or aha for me as I was writing about communication and great question asking as to how we perceive communication. And the majority of us perceive communication in either images or pictures. And when we are communicating, when I'm speaking, hey, morning, Neil, how are you, brother? When I'm speaking to you currently, I'm trying to convey ideas, but those ideas can be abstract. So what our mind tries to do is create a picture of them or a movie of them or some relatable image, because most of us are heavily dominated by our visual senses, or we hear the way that it sounds, or we feel the way that it feels. But for the most part, when we're conveying an idea, we're creating an image in someone else's mind or in our own mind, because they're conveying what's in their internal experience to their external experience, to our external experience, to our internal experience. That sounds complicated, but that's what we're actually doing every time that we're communicating with somebody, is going out, coming out of their head into the real world, the shared, the common consciousness, being interpreted by our external senses and then deposited in our internal experience. And as it's happening, it's getting filtered through all of these past experiences. We're looking at people and saying, oh, that person looks like this person, or that tone sounds like this tone, or, those words came in a pattern at this time and that event looked like this, so this is what I'm going to compare it to. And it's crazy that we get anything done. This is why I believe that modern media, and when I say modern, I mean, the last 150, 200 years since we got photographs. I mean, art was always this way. As I'm saying this, art always worked this way. It was conveying a picture. That's why, and this is kind of where I'm going with this. I had a realization that the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It doesn't convey 1,000 words. It saves 1,000 words. because we can both look at the same image and have that same feeling happen. It's actually, what it's doing is it's taking the internal image and making it external and shared. If that makes any sense at all. Trying to convey this idea. Perfect. So as you know, normally we would have an image in our mind. If you and I are speaking, we'd have an image in our mind of what we're talking about. But when we have a picture that we're both looking at, we can share that same experience without the words, because we both understand the message that's being conveyed. Television and movies do the same thing. Now, we're not always going to have the exact same interpretation of those external images, but we are going to have a very similar imprint of that event. Now, our own interpretation is going to color it. Whatever has happened to us in the past, whatever references we have, they're going to color the same. That's why one person could watch a funny scene and think it's hilarious, and another person finds it offensive, because that's just the lens we're viewing these things through. But at the end of the day, it's the most accurate way for us to communicate and convey what we're trying to convey. Now, because we can't do this every day, and I was actually thinking about this and talking about dating sites are very terrible at getting these things conveyed, or getting, a realistic impression of who a person is by just having a photo and some words about yourself. It would be a much more accurate portrayal of a person if they did a video, and then you had to send video messages back and forth. Now, I'm not going to start a dating site. It's just something interesting to me that I find that we really don't. We just use that picture to try and convey who we are, but video would be a much more effective way of doing it. Now, where am I going with all of this? That is a great question, because some days I don't know. What I'm trying to say is we have a lot of stuff in the way of our communication. If you think about the fact that it has to come out of my head, into our shared experience, through your filters, into your internal experience, that's a lot of steps for one word to make it through. This is why our brain deletes, distorts, and generalizes everything, because we don't have time to try and process all of the information. We have to make it look like other things. That's why, if you have ever been in a fight with somebody you're close to, my mom and I used to do this all the time. One of us would say something in one tone, and the next thing you know, the next tone would be snottier and snottier, and all of a sudden we'd be pissed off at one another. And a part of that is because we're so alike, but the other part of that is it's just a pattern that we had run. And if I hear a certain tone, I would be like, well, blah blah blah, and that tone would trigger another reaction, and it was a chain reaction. All of a sudden we're in an argument. That's because our brain just goes, oh, hey, I know what that is. This is my usual emotional response, and this is how I'm going to return it. It's up to us to disrupt that emotional response. There is just a fraction of a second between all of our past filters and our assignment of meaning where we can change the interpretation of something. And it's not a simple thing. It takes practice, but it's not an easy thing. It takes practice, but it is simple. It's just saying that, this pattern that has run 1,000 times and is very unconscious, maybe it doesn't mean that. And I can assign a new meaning to it. Or when you're trying to communicate with somebody, understand how complicated it is, and try and use different tonalities, different tactics. Because if the same tonalities of annoyance have always gotten you the same response of frustration, maybe the tone is what's changing it. Maybe the tone is what needs changing and not just the words. Or maybe it's the words and the tone was fine. We don't know, but these combinations of things create images in our mind and create emotional responses. So, moral of the story. Start to recognize the patterns in how we speak with the people around us, especially the ones closest to us. We have a tendency to treat strangers better than we treat the people we love the most, which is really messed up. But start to notice how you communicate with the people you care about the most and see where you've created unconscious patterns of friction. And as soon as you become aware of them, now you can start to try and change them. Maybe it's the words, maybe it's the tonality, maybe it's the time of day, maybe it's the tempo. There's all sorts of things we can do to communicate more effectively. But first, become aware of them. Notice that, hey, you're not doing this intentionally. It's not that you're a bad person. It's just that it's up to us to communicate what we really want to say to the other person. So if we're getting a response that we don't like, obviously it's the way that we're communicating that's not working. We have to get our image into somebody else's mind. If you want to do that, the only way to do that is by leading them down a question path that is predetermined. There was an old thing I used to, when I was training in sales, I always said I never ask a question that I don't already know the answer to. Doesn't mean that every question I know the answer to. It means that I had a predetermined path where the questions were going to take me. And I believe it was, it's Dale Carnegie that says, a person convinced against their will is still of the same opinion. That means you have to implant the idea. The way to implant an idea in somebody's brain is to ask them questions. Honest and sincere, and it's not manipulative, but it's a way for you to communicate more effectively that allows you to start to frame a picture or a movie in someone else's mind through a line of questioning. We'll get into that more. This book's going to be good. I'm pretty excited about it. Do me a favor, like this, share this, comment, all of those things, subscribe, and above all else, if you want to pre-order the book, go to guidetothegrind.com right now. It's still a 33% discount, and that will be on sale until the first of the year when the book is released. And that's it for me today. Until tomorrow, know that I love you, and we'll see you soon.